Welcome to Timbo Talks, a weekly podcast about work and play. Today I'm talking to my colleague and expert salesperson, Ryan Stott. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Tim. Welcome. I think you overcooked me on the intro there a little bit.
No, not at all. I do regard you as an expert salesperson, and that's why I've invited you onto the podcast. Of course, I actually wanted to talk about a subject that's, well, it's not only relevant to salespeople, it's relevant to everyone. It's like, why do we find it so hard to say what we mean online, I guess? Not only online, I guess it could be in person, it could be on a Zoom call, could be on a Teams call. But why do we actually struggle to communicate what we want to communicate? Like, why do we get in our own way? The reason why I've been thinking about this, I just read a fantastic ebook by a gentleman called Josh Bernoff. The ebook is actually about writing, copywriting. And the title of the book is Writing Without Bullshit. And I thought, well, not only is that a great title, the ebook actually has a lot of excellent information in there for anyone that's paid to write. But I was inspired by that title. So I thought our podcast would possibly be talking without bullshit.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think I've got a pretty good ability to not talk shit. But if you've followed my social channels, I think it's probably a good point case in point, it's like I'm probably not authentic online. Like, I don't feel like I'm saying the things I really want to say. Like, with your help, a couple of the last articles that I've written on LinkedIn, they feel more like it's me actually getting my point across and saying what I want to and being a bit more authentic. But before that, it was always social's just a thing that you just go on, you say what you think, what you want people to say.
Right.
You say what people want you to say. So then you restrict yourself a little bit. You don't really tap into the things that you want to.
Right.
Authenticity.
So based on what you said, when we go on social, when we go online, there's a performative aspect of it, and we feel that we have to perform in a certain way, or perhaps people are expecting us to perform in a certain way.
Yeah, I definitely do. Like, consider where we work and what we do. I definitely feel that there's some sort of, like, I have to perform within the company guidelines as well as within my guidelines and try and blend the two. Whether I do that effectively or not is up to anyone else to judge. But I personally don't think I do well enough. I could definitely do better at it.
Yeah, one of the things the author of the book I referenced, Writing Without Bullshit, he said that, like, he actually presented a golden rule, and the golden rule was that you actually have to treat your reader's time as more valuable than your own time. And if you nail that rule first, like, all his other tips, and there's a lot of tips, but like all his other tips are sort of secondary to that. This idea that the person you're talking to or communicating to, their time is worth a lot more than yours. Like, it may not be, but
if you approach it in that way, you're going to have that in mind, so that you're going to come off a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. Another little tip he had, which really sort of changed my perspective on everything, was, imagine if you actually had to pay for each word you were writing in your communications. Or, like, let's say each word was $10.
Yeah.
And you were actually up for that amount, depending on whatever the word count was of your communication. Like, you would become an expert in communicating in the most concise way possible.
Yeah. I think you've got your own tips on that. Like, because I coach the guys, like, other people through how to be more active on places like LinkedIn and Twitter. So, like, and other salespeople. And one of the key things that I constantly come back to is brevity is key. And I got that from you. So If you write something, I sit down and then go, okay, how can I make this shorter? And I'll go over it 3 or 4 times.
Right. So if you were aiming for brevity, thank you, by the way, I'm glad you got that from me. But if you were aiming for brevity, Ryan, and you only have a limited amount of words or a limited space to pitch something or communicate something, obviously you are going to get to whatever it is you want to say much quicker, yes? Would that be right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And like I've found as an exercise, as soon as you said that, I was like, okay, every time I sit down and write something, how can I make this more concise, quicker, easier, and still get my point across? And that's, yeah, I think it's something that's definitely good, because you're not only saving the reader time, you eventually get better. It's a muscle you flex, and then you start saving yourself time when you're trying to get your points across. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess the background to all this is, if we're trying to present a message or an idea, our audience, whoever they may be, they're actually being bombarded by lots of other messages. Like, we're not the first person who has like reached out to them or whatever, created a post or sent them an email. Like, you know, we might be one of, I'm just pluck a figure out of the air, like 300 that day.
Yeah.
Maybe more if it involves a person scrolling through their LinkedIn feed, for instance.
Yeah. Like the majority of the things that I'm trying to write, like when I think about what I'm writing on social, it's probably, you'll tell straight away that's not really my social feed. I'm not really posting too often. But where I'm trying to incorporate like how I can get my message across as quickly is in these sales messages. And lots of people do that on LinkedIn. Like, they're trying to pitch their ideas. So every person's got one inbox, and you probably get 5 to 10 little sales messages a day. How can you be the one that stands out and gets your point across and taps into that as quickly as possible and effectively? Like, not just quickly. There's a difference between being quick and being effective. I can say something really quick, but it won't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. So the attention economy, there's a lot of competition there, basically.
Yeah. I guess that's nothing new, is it? It's definitely a thing that I find I have to try and compete with and think about. I wouldn't consider myself to be a good writer, but trying to get a client's message across as quickly as possible is something I definitely want to keep trying to do and get better and better at. Something
we all fear that actually came up in this book I just read, Writing Without Bullshit. It didn't come up until chapter 3, though. Like, there was a whole chapter devoted to fear, and the author presented the idea that a lot of us struggle to write in a straightforward manner because basically we're afraid, which seemed unusual to me, but like when he unpacked it, it made sense. So we have a fear of being wrong. So if we're writing something, we're afraid it might not be the right thing.
Yeah.
Afraid of having an opinion. That resonated with me.
Yeah.
And then
I think that there's so many topics now that everyone is expected to have an opinion on, and you look at like social movements where you might think your opinion's not right. Even if you look at some of these movements, and older generations, I imagine, would be the same. I know my parents they're definitely not scared to say their opinion online. But, yeah.
The Facebook factor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's why you switch Facebook off.
Yeah, I mean, that fear of having an opinion, I even think you could flip that, because speaking from my experience, like, I've experienced fear not because I have an opinion, but because I don't have a definite opinion on something. And because we live in quite a polarized world, if you can't definitively define like a strong opinion on something, like, you might be seen as weak, or you might be seen as supporting something people don't like, when you don't actually support something at all. You just haven't formed an opinion yet. And
yeah, it's something that might not have to, you just haven't given the time of thought to. I think there's heaps of things like that I could identify with, where it's just I don't really have an opinion on it because it doesn't really affect me, so I don't really say anything. I don't say anything because of that. It's not due to fear. It's more just due to, it's not my place to say something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like before we started this call, we were referring to a situation we both saw on social. We're not going to name any names, but someone gave a contrary opinion. They left a comment on a social post, and it was to do with data analysis. And, my profession is editing and copywriting. I didn't really feel qualified to give my opinion because I don't regard, even though I work with data, I don't regard myself as a data scientist. But the problem was the social post was about an issue that was quite emotive, and there was probably a solid discussion to be had on the ins and outs of data analysis, but like it was probably the wrong post to have that discussion because it was coupled with like a topic that people feel very strongly about. Yeah.
And anytime you've got a sensitive topic that's being discussed online, it's sometimes I always think twice whether I get involved. Like I'd love to see people's like history of like when they've typed something to say something and then stopped and gone, nah, I'm not going to say that, and deleted it. I'd love to know some sort of data behind that. How often does that happen?
Yeah, that's really interesting question, because it probably happens a lot, because another fear factor is like fear of being held responsible. Like if you say something and it turns out it's not right, like what's the repercussions?
Yeah, 100%. Like that just triggered, like I often will have conversations with people, but like not online. There's more like one-to-one conversations with someone where I kind of take the brevity as key into the real world as well. So when I'm trying to say something, quite often I don't supply the context with it or the knowledge that I have to support my thing, and I'll just say it as short as possible to get my point across. And quite often that turns into a spicy conversation because someone's gone, oh shit, you need to unpack that a little bit. But if I was to do that on social, then I can imagine that there would be other people then swarm in, and you might not be prepared to defend yourself in that situation where there's other people sort of jumping in that you don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you've identified a potential pitfall. We're talking about brevity. It's a virtue, getting to the point, saying what you mean. But then if people misinterpret what you're saying or don't understand it, like there could be repercussions on that, not because you're being blunt, but maybe they don't have the background on what you're saying.
Yeah. So does the onus always fall on you? Does the onus, like the reader, it is also like, I feel a responsibility for the reader that like when they see something, they control how they react to that. And it's up to them about how they process that. And quite often if they read it and they might like get a little bit triggered, for lack of a better word, then that isn't necessarily because you've said something inflammatory. It's because someone's just inferred different things in what you said because of the knowledge that they have.
Right. Yeah. So communicating in a bold, clear and honest way, I mean, if we do that, we could still piss someone off.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, I think you're always going to upset people because, you know, everyone has unique knowledge to them, and that's how you form your own opinions based on what you have learned and where you've focused your attention. And then it becomes, you know, when you try to get that across, you could be talking to people that don't have all the information that you have. So then it's, you know, I find this all the time just when you're communicating with anyone, even just on a day-to-day, like if we take, like how far do we take, like when you're talking on social, do we take that to like Slack channels like that we use at work? Is that counted as like a social tool? And quite often you establish that in these short little conversations that are all written text and that sort of thing. I know I used to have, like when email started to really become a thing, I always had this opinion that I was like, it really sucks to sit down and read an email because you can't understand the tone, the context, all these other little factors that you get from human conversation. So it's kind of just like a dry thing, which is why I started writing emails in this really dry, blunt, straight to the point kind of way. Whether that was a good thing or not, I'll leave up to other people to decide. But
yeah, so now that everything has pivoted to remote work because of the COVID situation, you know, you have a situation where an organization, they might bring in a new employee to perform a certain task, but because they've been brought in under, you know, the lockdown situation, they haven't had the experience of working in the office with everyone else who works within the organization. So if they received a communication from Ryan, if they had actually met you in the office and had incidental social interactions with you, there's already all that data, all that understanding of like who you are, but because they haven't actually met you, they might have actually seen you on a Zoom call or a Teams call, which is a very structured environment. It's not incidental communication, but they might think you're being a jerk when you're not, because they haven't been like exposed to you in a real life setting. Like, does that make sense?
Why would they think I'm being a jerk?
Well,
it's just the nature of Ryan. Yeah, no, I completely like, and that, yeah, we've had that situation, right? So like, and I've noticed it. So, but the funny thing that I've noticed off the back of it was, so there's people in our team that I haven't met physically,
right?
And
yeah,
I have no interaction with them. But then, as part of their onboarding, they get told to go and book time with all the people that they're going to be at least sort of speaking to at some point throughout their time. So, like, we've been pretty good at like that. When people get onboarded, they book that time with all the people that they're going to touch with. And I've found that before that touch point, like the last two people that this happened to, before that touch point, there'd be no context from them to understand where I'm coming from when I'm saying something in a group setting, or like in a group channel where it's like everyone can see. And then I found after we've had that conversation, they will now interact with the things that I'll say, because they kind of have a better understanding of who I am and how what I'm saying is supposed to be intended. Usually it's just, stupid shit that I'm saying, or posting stupid GIFs or something like that. And so before they would have just thought, I don't know how to take this. But then after, now I'm seeing that more.
Yeah. So if someone knows us in a social setting or an informal setting, perhaps we have license to be bolder, more concise in our communications, because there's less chance of being misunderstood because they already know us in that other context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's it's funny. Like I have friends that have, big followings on social networks, and I don't follow their socials, but like I don't, like, obviously I am connected to them in some way, and I don't always go and follow their content. I'm not a fan of theirs. I'm just a friend of theirs. And I see that what they do on social is different to how they are in real life. And I don't know whether that's intentional or it's just the nature of this beast. And I think personally, these are my friends. So like, I love these people. So the disconnect just doesn't make sense to me, because I was like, well, why don't you just be yourself?
Yeah, precise. Yeah, it does make sense. Going back to like unstructured conversations, incidental conversations. I was talking to someone yesterday. He's based in Singapore, and he actually told me that this is a paradox, he now blocks out time in his calendar for things that are unstructured. So, for instance, Wednesday, he blocks out 1 to 4 p.m., but it's not an actual meeting. It's just a block of time that he's given to himself to go, I'm going to ring this person. I'm just going to have a conversation, see how they are. I'll do a Zoom call with that person, just check in how they're going. It's not people reporting into him, sharing, their latest KPIs or anything, because he's realized now that the world we live in, like, it's just not happening anymore, because obviously we're not going to the office for safety reasons. I just thought that was interesting to actually have a structured approach to unstructured time, with the goal of like trying to get this incidental type of communication happening again.
Yeah. I found at the start of COVID, I'd do those sort of things. I just like, maybe month 1 or month 2, and just start calling my friends and have a chat randomly at night. Yeah. Just start calling around people that you just haven't interacted with in a while, but yes. Not through, but usually previously you would have interacted with all the time, because you'd go to the pub, you'd go see them socially. So I found that was something I started to do just naturally. But since then, I haven't been adding structured time. So I'm not actually doing it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't want to talk to them anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I've read a few things that are actually challenging the notion that what we're going through now is like paradise for introverts, because I sort of self-identify as an introvert. And so working from home, like, it just seems perfect. But there seems to be some preliminary ideas or maybe even preliminary research out there that even like an introvert like myself who, likes flying solo, likes keeping to himself, there is a benefit from the incidental interactions that I used to have, say, in the office. And it's not just socializing. There's something else you get from the incidental interactions. It's hard to quantify, but
You try. If you had
well,
to, like,
you
what would you
like
say?
imagine that you're deficient in some kind of vitamin or something, and it was causing you health problems, and you need to rebalance your health by introducing whatever this thing is that's missing. And so,
Yeah.
the way we used to interact and communicate, even like for an introvert who says, "Well, I don't like to socialize," no problem. They still actually need that human interaction, even though they might not be extroverted or whatever. There's something they're getting that they just don't like get over, say, like a structured meeting or something over a video
Yeah,
call.
it's like when
Yeah,
you walk outside in the sun and you get your vitamin D. You don't not necessarily conscious that you're getting that, but it's happening. Once you
precisely.
shut that out, you'll start to notice that it's not there.
Sunshine, you explained it so much better than my rambling effort.
Brevity is key, Tim.
Brevity is key.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another idea is that if it's hard to write or communicate in a straightforward manner because of the fear factor, like that means we're not writing or communicating clearly. And the author of that book I read, he like made the bold claim that if you can't write clearly, you can't actually think clearly, which seemed like a big statement. But what do you think of that?
That seems like, yeah, I can kind of, I don't know, without reading the book, I kind of feel his point, like, but at the same time, like, I've said this a few times at work. There was this, like, there's a thing on my dad's wall where he used to say, where he used to put up like when I was working for my dad when I was a teenager, he used to have all these like sales inspiration quotes around the wall, and one of them he kept up there as a joke, but it was, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? And I kind of feel the same way about when I write something. It's like often if I have to sit down and write a blog, I'll just sit down and just brain dump like exactly what I'm thinking and just put it all on the page. And I don't really think about too much about the structure or what I'm trying to get out. I just have a general idea of what I'm trying to get out. But I wouldn't say that my thoughts are clear in doing that. So it's kind of like I get it out and then you clear it up afterwards. But then the finished product that comes in, well, like if I specifically talk about the last couple of blogs that I've written on LinkedIn, they are a bit more in line with how I would think, and they're a bit more clear, and they are supporting the thoughts that I've had and wanted to get out. So yeah, I like it as a statement. Do I 100% agree with it? I'm not 100% sure, but
Yeah, when I think about that statement, like if it's true, and I think it's at least partly true based on my experience, writing is kind of spooky because if, like, as you say, you just dump everything on the page, like that process, and then looking at it and then trying to make it clear and easily understood. Like, I've had a couple of situations where I actually discover what I think about something, whereas where I wasn't able to explain it beforehand.
yeah,
And it's like,
that's
oh
the
wow,
whole
I
point.
really am an asshole.
Yeah, we no, I don't hate people. Well, actually, maybe I do. It's definitely a thing. But like, I love that statement. Like, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? Because quite often, like, if you don't, like, we don't give ourselves the time to sit down and process a lot of our thoughts and go clearly. Okay, I know that I've got so like, yeah, like you know that you've got a strong point about something, but it's not refined. It's not clear. It's kind of just like this is what I think. I think if you like that's where I guess it ties back to this authenticity on social. I think some of the people with the biggest social profiles and like that have done really well for themselves by being authentic just kind of don't have that filter or that fear. They just say what they think. They're happy to be wrong because then they'll change their opinion afterwards, but they just say what they think.
Yeah, I wonder how they got past that fear though, because obviously there was a point in their history where, they probably had very few followers or whatever. They didn't have their current profile. They were starting from scratch. I wonder what it was.
It's just, yeah, is it just that mentality of like, screw it, just do it. Like, just
Yes.
start doing it. Like, if you look at what's his name, great example. DJ Khaled, right? Literally goes on any platform and just starts saying what he thinks, doesn't really care about the repercussion, just says it.
Right.
You know, and he thinks about it now, like after the fact. He sort of thinks about everything as being part of his brand, and that's what he's doing. But I can't remember what it was, but I watched a really interesting documentary where they were talking to him about the different social channels that he uses. I think Snapchat is one of the ones that he's just huge on. And people are like, how did you get that? And he's just like, I just saw it as a new platform, knew I wanted to be on it, and just started saying what I thought in this short little way. And it just worked really well.
Right. Wow. So, I mean, I'm obviously showing my age here because I don't follow DJ Khaled. I've heard of him. So he's on all the platforms, yeah? He's probably not on LinkedIn though, is he?
I don't know. We can check. He probably is. I know Kendrick Lamar is on LinkedIn.
Really? Wow.
Or at least someone set a fake profile up for him. They accepted my connections. I don't know.
Wonder what his social selling index is.
Pretty rubbish. His profile's not really finished, just an image. Like Richard Wilkins, yeah, he's on social. He's on LinkedIn. I'm going to go and connect with him.
Wow, yeah. Well, the way the media industry is going, he'll probably be putting that little badge up saying open to opportunities or something. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, probably soon. Probably. He doesn't respond to messages though. Of course, I connected with him when he accepted my connect. I definitely. Who doesn't want to have a chat with Richard Wilkins?
Of course. Well, he was really the face of MTV Australia back in the day when MTV showed up on Australian shores. That was a big deal.
Yeah. He was a big deal. Is he anymore?
Even if you're not a big deal, the whole point of this discussion is you should be able to speak in a bold, clear and honest way. Like you don't need a massive media profile. In fact, it's probably easier to speak in a bold, clear and honest way if your profile isn't too big, really, because you have a bit more freedom.
Yeah. Do you feel that we're learning bad habits by just watching what others do? So when you see these other people sort of get big and then you think, okay, well, that's what I've got to do if I want to be successful on social or something like that. But maybe are people even thinking, is that even what's crossing their mind is when they go to post something on Facebook? Do they want it in the core of their little, like what they're really willing for? Do they want it to blow up and heaps of people to look at them and listen to their opinion? Is that what they're after?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, some no doubt would. The only thing I would say there is, yes, Ryan, I agree. I think we are actually learning bad habits because we like to imitate success. But when you read a lot of success stories, you find that the person, they almost just stumbled upon their success. Not always. I mean, there's a lot of sweat and hard work. But in terms of becoming known on a social platform, I think that the newsfeed algorithms crave novelty. So because we're sort of, everything's being vetted by algorithms, it's like it's better not to imitate. It's better to find whatever your voice is, which no one else has, because like you, Ryan, you are completely unique. There's not another Ryan out there to my knowledge. So it's what makes you different is what your point of leverage would be in terms of developing a voice. That's my theory.
Yeah, I'd agree. But then on the, like, alongside that, like there is also still a thing that's like, well, I don't really care what people think. I don't really, how do I phrase that? Like, I don't want to think too much about, like, I don't really care about becoming really popular on social media. It's not something that I really give a shit about because I haven't, like, if you go on my, like, I don't post on any of my personal channels. Like the only channel I post on is the work ones, like LinkedIn. That's it. I've dabbled in Facebook for work though, but like I don't.
Yeah, I think there's a definite opportunity, a definite market though on a platform like LinkedIn, which is primarily a professional platform though for people to be bold, clear and honest. And that doesn't mean polarizing. It's just getting to whatever, you know, your value proposition is as quickly as possible. Because if you're trying to reach out to someone and you have something that can make their life easier, but it's actually quite a complicated thing, you need to somehow work out what the essence of that thing is. You know, it might not be like these 20 features of a new piece of software or something. It might just be like that one concise sentence which the recipient would go, oh yeah, if, you know, I didn't have to do that anymore, my life would be so much better.
Yeah. And that's people are not, I don't find people are very good at that on LinkedIn. Getting to that, how I can help real quickly.
Yeah.
And I think on LinkedIn, we do a lot of like what, you know, there was a really interesting one. I was talking to we had a new customer this week who's really early on in their journey. Like they've just started the business. They didn't have any social channels. They've got no experience in sort of how do they market their business or how do they do anything. And so the conversation was all around real basics. Like how often do I post on a channel? Like what do I post? How do I do the content? And it's hard to try and express to them to say, just honestly, just get out there and be authentic about what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it, because that will help. Because people still they spent maybe 5 days just researching things before they reached out to me again to say, we're a bit stuck on this, and you know, what's your opinion? People sort of get like that analysis paralysis because there's so much content about what you should be doing, and this is best practice, and that's how you do that. And people naturally just go to Google to try and find an answer now, rather than sitting down and going, okay, if I'm actually just talking to 20 human beings, what would I say and how would I say it?
Yes.
So,
yeah, that's good advice. Imagine you're in front of a small audience and you need to keep their attention.
Yeah, because people are going to switch off if you just start battering them with these inauthentics like sales messages. They just switch off. They're just going. People love to buy, but they hate to be sold to.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So
one of my favorites at the moment.
That's a good line. What would you say to someone who, you know, you've given them some advice, you've told them to be authentic with a capital A, but what if they said to you, well, you know, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I post the wrong thing? What if? Like, what would you say to them?
What would I personally say? Who cares? Like, it doesn't really matter. Because if you watch, like, every person that had some sort of massive stuff up online and said something they shouldn't have, usually goes away after a short period of time.
Right, yeah.
People have short-term memories on that sort of stuff as well. You know, what's his name? Kevin Hart. He hasn't got the best personal life, but everyone turns a blind eye to it and forgets about it and just goes, you know, that's just Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what level in the culture you are. Like, do some people get away with more than others? I'm not sure. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, but that would definitely, that would have to be a factor. Because if you've only got, like, say 100 people that follow you and you say something really controversial, that could potentially mean all 100 stop following you. Then it's going to be hard to build back up. But you might find new people that agree with you after that. And then I guess that's how you get Nazi groups online.
One thing I've noticed, I don't know how far back this went, but I notice it all the time now. Like, for instance, when I search for something on Google, the new Google app, I can't remember what it's called, Discover or something on my phone. It's like a social media feed, but it's not social media. It just presents me a whole stream of stories just based on my Google search history, because it thinks, oh, you know, you're interested in this subject or you're interested in that subject. And one thing I've noticed is a lot of media outlets, well, the ones that remain, you can tell that the journalists, they're just looking for stories because it's a 24-hour news cycle. So they're actually scouring the social media feeds of famous people, and they're like just screenshotting posts and turning something which is kind of innocuous into a headline and a story. And then you read the story and there's like 4 paragraphs of background about that person that have nothing to do with the post they screenshot. And then at the bottom of the story is like the thing they screenshot. And it's almost like there's a desert out there, and there's like, we're bereft of like so much interesting information. Well, that's probably not true. There is interesting information out there, but like the mainstream media really does look to social media for a lot of their news stories because there's so much content on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I notice it all the time. Like I used to notice it. So I've been on Reddit for I've got my 10-year badge. Woo.
Wow.
So when I
Congrats.
was on, yeah, thank you. My first, like I started to notice it like maybe 2010, 2011, that like I would go through just the top posts on Reddit that day as my sort of just scroll through, and then the next morning or that night, there'd be like social articles on a lot of Australian news outlet, like TV news, and they'd talk about these things. So they're just trending topics on a popular platform that they then just take snippets of and then go, let's just turn that into a story quickly. It's kind of just news for the sake of news. It's not really.
Yeah. I mean, if I was in that position and I had X amount of content to fill, like,
That's definitely how you do it.
yeah, I could not say,
Already been market
well,
tested.
I'm above that, because if I was, I wouldn't be in that role, because
Yeah, you'd be doing investigative journalism and really researching your topics, not like a BuzzFeed newsfeed.
yeah. Well, they didn't even
Yeah, that's how
survive in
BuzzFeed started.
Australia. BuzzFeed Australia, I don't think they're a thing anymore, are they? No.
Yeah, I got to watch I watched like a keynote with the CEO of BuzzFeed Australia.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't particularly impressed, if I'm completely honest.
Right. Okay.
It was, obviously it's clever that you just tapped into something that no one else is doing and you're just resharing popular, like pop culture really. But it wasn't anything groundbreaking, and it wasn't the sort of thing that you go, wow, that's really good.
Yeah. I mean,
Do want to be careful what I say.
yeah. Warning.
Yeah.
Old person opinion coming, but there just doesn't seem to be as much substance in a lot of these stories as there used to be. But there's so much more content out there now.
Yeah, I really want to try and find a visualization somewhere of like I don't know how you would do it, but if you take like this thing that we're talking about where there could just be one little social post that someone, like Trump's probably a great example. He'll make one tweet that will trigger someone. They'll quickly write an article about how that triggered them, and then all of a sudden they'll put it on PR Wire or something, and next thing you know, that starts to get picked up by a ton of other things, and it's like everyone else is just rehashing that same thing. But really, what was said was a really minute little thing that doesn't really deserve anyone's attention, but all of a sudden we've given it mainstream attention.
Yeah, I think I won't say good example because that's not the right word, but he is a showcase example of that, I suppose. And I just always wondered, I mean, I don't know the discussions inside Twitter because Twitter is his platform. Like, I wonder if he wasn't tweeting the way he does, whether like some of the shine would come off Twitter. And when I say the shine, I mean as a destination for real-time news. Maybe it wouldn't. I just imagine this is a hypothetical. Would the people inside the halls of Twitter, would they resent the fact that at a point in the future, he might not be on the platform anymore, like bringing traffic to Twitter? I don't know.
There'd have to be an element because it's kind of hard to not say that he is quite influential for Twitter as a business.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of people, like a lot of news, like because that's where he just brain dumps, you're going to get all the news outlets are going to go just be on Twitter as the main source of let's watch Donald and see what happens.
Yeah. It's circling back to, our theme of like being able to talk in a bold, clear and honest way, or talking without bullshit. I suppose you could make the argument that, well, just look at how, say, Donald Trump, for instance, conducts himself on Twitter. Like if you were giving someone advice, like you're obviously not going to present yourself that way. So the thing that you're afraid of is actually quite small compared to sort of the shameless way he presents himself on Twitter. So like, why are you worried about this tiny thing? Because it's not even an inflammatory thing you're worried about.
Yeah, there is, like, there's definitely got to be something in that, right? Like, I'm not 100% sure that someone else writes his tweets for him. It
Yeah,
does feel pretty authentic. Like you're tapping straight into Donald's brain when he dumps this stuff out. So they probably are. Yeah. But yeah, we won't really know. Or maybe we do know. I don't know. I just realized I started to go down a train of thought that I don't really know the answer to.
Yeah.
So
Well,
someone else
I guess
may.
what I'm trying to say is like, there's plenty of scope for someone to be bold and honest without being offensive, because if you're sitting up at night worried about what people thinking of you, like you look at the way, say, the president of the United States tweets, like, we live in that world. We live in that world.
Yeah. But is that just it? Some people are just not wired. They're just wired differently. Where some people have got no problem saying what they think.
Yes.
And they do. They shoot from the hip and say what they think. And social platforms just give them an outlet to do that quickly and easily. And I think a lot of people that aren't good at that, I feel collectively, if you're not good at something, you're going to be admirable, like have at least a certain level of admiration of people who are good at it, even if you disagree with them. So it's kind of like, you just get pushed up to you're seen as being good at it just because you have this simple thing where you just don't really give a shit. So you just do it.
Yeah. So this is really now going into the downside or the risk of all this, because if we say what we mean, but like in the wrong way or at the wrong time or to even the wrong person, like we could actually get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, definitely. You've had to edit articles of mine to say, well, you probably shouldn't say that, Ryan. You might lose your job. So,
yeah.
It's definitely,
I guess there's a fine distinction in like being clear in what you want to say, particularly when you're trying to offer a service to someone and then just insulting people. Like it's not actually the same thing, I suppose, although there's a danger of it becoming the same thing.
It kind of sounds like you just said that when the article that I wrote was insulting people. That's not the case. Well, actually I was, wasn't I? To a degree.
Well, I mean, like someone like yourself who has a lot of experience in sales, particularly reaching out to people on LinkedIn, you have a lot of experience and you've seen, I mean, you have data to show certain things work, certain things don't. So
yeah,
like it's almost licensed for you to be bold because you're not someone who's just showed up overnight. Like you're actually bringing years of experience with you. So, I mean, that should, if we're discussing a subject that we have a great deal of experience in, there's always something to learn, but like we should allow that to empower us to be bold to an extent. Because I think people do respond to confidence as well.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I keep sort of thinking back to the like taking social aside altogether. Like people, I think in general not everyone is designed to be bold about what they say and have strong opinions. You read all the different personality types that there are across each sort of one. You say you're an introvert and someone classify me as an extrovert. So like different strokes for different folks. Not everyone's going to be able to be authentic even in real life, let alone is this just something that we deal with and just go, okay, it is what it is. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. For good or for bad, though, we do live in a world where like we need to be heard, like we need to rise above the noise. So even if our personality type is one that, we'd rather keep to ourselves, but like we have something of value to communicate, it's almost like we've got to work out tactics or a strategy to, present ourselves despite our reservations or limitations of our personality or whatever.
But that's a difficult thing to do. Not everyone's capable of having that sort of internal self-reflection to go, okay, I'm going to push myself here to do this.
Yeah, so to any introverts listening to Ryan and I discuss this topic, you don't have to leave the communication to the extroverts. I mean, to be a little bit controversial, it's probably better if we hear from some more introverts.
100%. I said, what is it, Susan Cain, Quiet? Have you read that?
No, I haven't. Is it a good book?
Really good, yeah. Yeah, really good. I think it's Susan Cain. I'm not 100% sure. Memory's not the best in my old age, but yeah, the book's called Quiet. It's fantastic, and it's all about how what introverts bring to the table, especially in corporate settings. Like, and it's written in a way to encourage introverts to not go out and be extroverted, but just be comfortable in your introversion and know when and what to do. Yeah, when to get involved.
I'll have to check that out. So Quiet.
Yeah.
By Susan Cain. Excellent.
With a C, I think.
With a C.
CAIN. I could be very wrong there. I don't know.
Well, Ryan, this has been a great discussion. I've got a lot from this.
Hopefully we touched on the right topics. Didn't stray too far from what you're expecting when we started.
No, well, it was like open mic night on Tim's podcast. Anything could have happened. So if people are listening to our conversation, Ryan, and they think, wow, Ryan is a very insightful person, I'd like to connect with him. Where can people find you? Is it LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn, yeah.
Okay, so Ryan...
LinkedIn's the best.
Okay, so Ryan Stott.
LinkedIn.com/Ryan G. Stott.
Excellent. Thanks for your time, Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Tim.
Until next time. Thank you for listening to Timbo Talks. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, or your favourite podcast app. You can also find me on Twitter or Instagram as Timbo Horan, TimboHoran. Until next time.